I'm Yewande, and today we're making soups. A ginger cauliflower soup, a simple butternut squash soup, and a spicy peanut and squash soup. It's cold out, it's sweater weather. Soups are cozy and comforting. They're all really simple to put together. It takes just a few ingredients, and they all come together in about 30 minutes or less. The first recipe we're working on today is a ginger cauliflower soup. The first step is to saute the lemongrass and the ginger and get it a little fragrant. You're just opening up the oils. So I'm going to break down my lemongrass, just trim the top and the bottom, and then I cut it into little sections. I use the back of my knife to smash it. What I'm doing here is opening it up so that a lot more of the lemongrass is exposed. I'm also sort of releasing the oils so the oils come to the surface. You can smell it a lot more after you've smashed it. I'm not peeling my ginger because I feel like it's not important. It doesn't change the flavor whether you peel it or not. It's scrubbed, you just want to get the dirt off, but you don't have to peel it. I'm using a neutral oil here, so it's just an oil that doesn't really have a taste, because I really want the flavors of all the aromatics that I'm putting in it to shine. Kind of like I did with the lemongrass, I'm smashing my garlic to just release the oils to the surface. So I'm only cooking this a little bit until I can start to really smell it. That's about 1 minute. Add the garlic in. So I'm just going for even pieces. What I'm really doing is not cutting the florets. I'm just pulling them off this middle section and breaking them up. It's all gonna get blended and it'll add to the flavor. Potatoes to give it some body. Salt. Pour in my stock. I want the potatoes to be tender, I want the cauliflower to be tender, and that's just gonna take a little bit of time. The soup's going, the cauliflower and the potatoes are getting softened, it's simmering, it smells great. I'm gonna prep the topping. My first step is to trim the tops of the scallions. But you don't have to saute the scallion or anything. It goes into the dressing raw and then gets cooked by the lime juice and the vinegar. Lime zest. Okay. Ginger. A little salt. A little rice vinegar. The honey just adds a touch of sweetness. And then just let this sit and marinate. And now I'm gonna toast my sesame seeds. It takes about 1.5 to 2 minutes. The seeds start to pop a little bit. The color changes from like a little dull to a little shinier. So I'm gonna let that cool before I add it to the marinade. I'm just checking on my soup really quick. Yeah, that's tender. The potatoes are tender all the way through. The cauliflower breaks down easy, and that's what you're looking for. So I'm gonna fish out the lemongrass and then put it in the blender. I'm transferring the cauliflower to the blender. Just be really careful doing this. Make sure it's covered. You don't want hot liquid all up on you. If you want a chunky soup, just puree it enough to leave some chunks in there. I want this soup to be like finely pureed, so I'm gonna finely puree, but you don't have to. Okay, so my soup's done, my topping's done, and ready to eat. The scallion dressing is so good. With the potato in there too, it could actually be a meal. Lemongrass comes in later. There's like little pops of crunch from the sesame seeds and the ginger, yum. So we're on to our next soup, which is a spicy peanut and pumpkin soup. It's actually based off of a recipe from Mafe, which is a pretty common recipe in West Africa. It's a spicy peanut soup. I'm gonna start by chopping up some ginger. That's my ginger. I'm gonna smash my garlic. I'm using olive oil in this case because the flavor of the peanut is strong enough to mask whatever oil you use. Okay, so my oil is shimmering. That means it's hot. Onions, ginger and garlic. I'm just really sauteing until the aromatics are softened and fragrant. I'm not trying to caramelize or brown. I just want them to be tender. So the next step is my chili. If you want the oils of the chili without the heat, just drop it in whole. Seeds are really where the heat is. So you can use the whole chili, fish it out before you blend, and that way you don't get the heat, but you get the flavor. In this case, I'm going to add my half chili, but I'm adding it with the seeds because I want a little bit of the heat. You can also roast the squash and add it in, but to make it easier, I'm just going with canned pumpkin. I'm using store-bought vegetable stock. And then I'm just gonna let this come up to a simmer, cover it. I'm gonna add in my coconut milk. And for this soup, I'm going full fat coconut milk. I'm using a natural peanut butter that just has peanuts and salt. It looks lumpy now, but like this is gonna go in the blender. I want the honey to round out the soup, like a subtle sweetness. A little bit more salt. And then I'm just gonna throw this in the blender. So this is just a topping that I'm adding to the spicy peanut soup for a little texture. Olive oil, some cumin seed, raw peanuts, and salt. It's really just to add some texture, some crunch. The heat starts to transform the peanuts. I'm gonna move them to my board and chop them once they cool. Moving them to the board also stops the cooking process, so it's not sitting in the pan. Just going for a rough chop. This way you get a little crunchy option with your soup. That's beautiful. It's so smooth. I get a little kick at the end. The peanuts add a little crunch. The creme fraiche adds a nice roundness to the soup. The chopped chives are just a little pop of freshness. So we're on the last soup, which is just a very simple, classic butternut squash soup. I roasted my squash ahead of time. You want it to be soft enough to scoop out with a spoon. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start the soup. This soup, I think, is about like a 20 to 30 minute and under soup. The only thing that really takes time is roasting the squash, which you could do up to 3 days ahead. Garlic, salt. I'm just softening my aromatics. If I don't cook it all the way, when I put it in the blender, there's gonna be a little crunch of uncooked vegetables, which I don't want. At this point, my squash could go in. You're not adding the skin, you're just adding the softened flesh. Ginger, some cinnamon and some nutmeg. Stir that in. So I'm just gonna puree it. Carefully pour it back. I'm gonna taste my soup, kind of just to see where the flavor is right now. I'm gonna add a splash of acid. I'm gonna add some honey. You could bring it back up to a boil if you want. If you're not serving it immediately, you can just cover it at this point and warm it up when you're serving it. I'm gonna top it with some chili crunch for a little bit of texture. That's it. Ooh, I like that chili oil. I'm getting pumpkin. I can taste caramelized onion. If you're looking for comfort and cozy, like that's your soup. It really tastes like fall. They not only taste good, but they're also easy to put together. It takes few ingredients. It doesn't take that long. It's like 30 minutes and under. All of these soups can be found in NYT Cooking.